Good evening, everyone. This is, of course, the Sharia Crime Stoppers, and we're continuing our news analysis series. Uh, you know what? A phrase of breaking news has become kind of mundane. I mean, everything's breaking news. On the other hand, the capacity for us to just have blockbuster news every single day makes these programs even more important. So we're very, very grateful, of course, to have Mary with us as always tonight. Good evening, Mary.
Hi, Dick. Shahram.
And Shahram Hadian continuing the series with Leo Hohmann. Leo will be joining us at 8 o'clock. Good news for Leo. He is continues to be in demand with great articles and great opportunities to reach out. He'll be joining us at 8. Shahram, it's wonderful to have you with us for the entire time. Thank you so much. You and Leo have become quite a team, and so we're happy to welcome you tonight.
Dick, it's great to be with you guys tonight with Sharia Crime Stoppers, all the audience out there, and of course with Leo as always. And I look forward to having him on here in a little bit.
Well, I got to say one thing too. You have become tremendously in demand. I will bet since you were with us, you have done 5 webinars with yourself and other people, maybe more than that, maybe it's 10. I keep seeing you pop up. I get invited to see you almost every day. So maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of an update in terms of just your activity level and what's been keeping you busy.
Well, Dick, you're absolutely right. I think that there are people waking up in this nation. There is a remnant of God's people that are patriots that are waking up to the need for freedom and liberty, and for us to organize and prepare for having, patriot communities and churches and all of those things. So we've been very busy the last few weeks since I saw you in Virginia. We were in Virginia there. What a great event, great weekend there, great folks there. Later, I'm going to ask you about an update. I think that for you guys personally there in Maryland, connecting, we're trying to connect people here down in Tennessee. I'm going to be in Indiana this coming weekend, southern part of Indiana. So, it's really been busy. I was on a webinar. It was a national webinar, a national conference, I should say, online conference that I was there on Zoom. Trying to educate the sheriffs and the public. It was called Free America Now, connecting citizens with the sheriffs, and we're trying to educate our sheriffs to their constitutional authorities. I was on with the Black Robe Regiment pastors. We had our own webinar this week that we had some great folks like Peggy Hall and Pastor Rob McCoy, who is a courageous pastor in California, defying the unconstitutional edicts of the governor there in their county. So yeah, we've been very busy. It is encouraging to see. Oh, and also we launched here in Knoxville Patriot Church. So we just had our second service this Sunday, where I was teaching and preaching this coming Sunday. So it's just been busy. We're going to be launching what's called Church at the City Hall, where we're taking the church to the places of authority, October 3rd, guys, here in West Knoxville area in Loudoun County. So God's just on the move, and I believe that there's a movement of people waking up. We just got to be available to be there to educate, but to connect. That's my heart, is also to connect. How God is moving. So this is very important tonight on this webinar, for us to connect all those who are joining us across the nation, to encourage them to connect with like-minded people in their own areas, because as we were just talking about before we went on air, some areas are going to be small. They're going to be a very small remnant, but they need to know each other. They need to be connected. So folks, you really just pray that God would connect you in the area that you are in with other like-minded Christians and patriots.
Shahram, if I could jump in real quick, tell our attendees what a patriot church is. What's the definition, and how best do you find what you would consider a patriot church?
That's a great question, Mary. The way that we're defining a patriot church, and we've gotten some criticism because people will say, "Oh, well, it's a church that just is going to talk about politics and is going to put the country over God." That's the furthest thing from the truth. It's actually a church that first and foremost is going to love God and lift up God and lift up the Word of God and lift up the gospel of Jesus Christ. But it's a church that also is willing to stand in the gap for its nation. And of course, here in America, our nation is built upon a constitutional republic. So we're looking for those churches and pastors, and our movement here is a new movement. So we just launched, and we have now another pastor who's going to be launching one in Lynchburg, Virginia, a Patriot Church, and I'm going to be in Middle Tennessee in a couple of nights talking to some folks there about a Patriot Church. So it's going to be a new movement, but at the same time, there are existing churches and pastors who carry that heart. And again, the heart is, look, we love God. We're gonna serve God's people. We're gonna be the church, but we're not afraid to tackle the issues of the day. You have a pulpit and you have a pastor that is not going to shy away from the political arena, from speaking about what is happening in the civil government, from understanding that it is our duty as Christians to affect the culture and affect our government and to affect the laws of our land and righteousness, and that we're not going to play this game that, oh, the church should not be involved in politics. What they don't understand, these pastors who say that, is that the government is now targeting Christians and churches. If that's not evident after COVID, I don't know what else to tell people. So, we can only pretend like they won't come after us in the church, but we are the main targets. So we got to engage them. And so that's really the spirit is again, in no way do we want to take away from ministering to people and serving God and loving his people. But it's a church and a pastor that understands we have to love our nation. We have to love the liberty of our nation, and stand for it. We're not going to let our country go to pot. We're not going to let our light be under a bushel. We're not going to stop being salt and light to our nation. And that's the key. That's the key. These are pastors, Mary, that love liberty as well. The liberty of Christ, as I always say, the liberty of Christ, but also the liberty of our republic. So great question. If I know one of the questions we're getting is, where can I find a Patriot Church? Well, you're going to have to do some digging. It's going to be upon you, because while we're trying to start new ones, folks, it's also going to be incumbent on your prayers that God would lead you. Just like maybe this is a good time that, Dick, could you just share real quickly about how God led you guys to find a Patriot Church in your area? Because I think that's a key part of this is we got to pray and ask God to lead us to identify these pastors that are standing.
Well, I'm just not anybody in particular, so I don't want to use the word miracle too loosely, but in our case, we went to see Shahram in Southwest Virginia, and we drove 5.5 hours. We had seen Shahram 2 months ago in that same location, and it turns out that we met 4 people who live 5 miles from where we live. They also took a 5-hour ride. We did not know each other. Those 4 people include a pastor of an ongoing church. We returned home separately, of course, but the next day was a Sunday. We went to that church, having met the pastor. Well, that pastor is a little bit taller than Shahram, but he's Shahram. I mean, he is absolutely biblical, absolutely, as is Shahram. He very straightforward. We just were catching up with this church, and we're benefiting from it already. I guess there's plenty of evidence. People are active. They're pursuing parts of the group are already involved in an organization called Hugs Over Masks, which is one of Shahram's issues. Shahram's had 2 webinars on the topic of forced vaccination and masks. So these people are already doing that. They're growing food. They're preparing for the kind of chaos that Shahram's been talking about, and Leo as well. I'll give you an example, though. I'll just share with you a little piece of the sermon, Shahram. So relative to biblical, the 10 Commandments, this is very natural. We went over the 10 Commandments again in this context. Well, one of them is obviously we have several commandments on worshiping idols. Now, one God before you. Well, the conversation was immediately presented that way with the pastor talking about Hohmann and his, worshiping an idol. Basically, Allah is an idol in a sense, and that was interesting. He also talked about the 10th commandment with the word covet, and I'm listening carefully. I haven't really thought about that in a while. His point was, we have lots and lots of people that covet what belongs to other people. And I'll just give you the anecdote he gave. One of those notions is that, well, if you wanted what somebody else had, you could go steal it, but then you'd be in jeopardy. You could get a group of people together and have them as a group separate from you steal it. But all of that provides, if you could convince the government that it's their job to do whatever they need to do, take what belongs to somebody else, and somehow you benefit from that, that's covet. That's the covet thing. And I just thought that was interesting. It's very much normally what they talk about, but he put it in the context of the Marxist Islamic revolution that's underway. So it was excellent, and certainly inspired me that the remnants are there. You can find the remnants. You might find a remnant church because you're a bunch of people who are not going to take vaccinations. You might find them because they are in other ways. So, I think part of it is being present. If we hadn't decided to go see Shahram, this wouldn't have happened. Of course, as you know, Shahram, we met Reverend Bill Cook there,
right?
Black Rose Regiment. He put you on the air 4 days later.
Yes.
Which was great. And so this notion of the ability to spread and to find the remnant, it's there. So I'm encouraged, and I thank you for that connection.
Wow. I mean, I thank the Lord for that. That's an incredible story, and amen to this pastor. So this is exactly what we need. This is, somebody who's willing to, not only willing to speak on these things, but then make the connections to the issues of the day. That's exactly it. Is the Word of God addresses these things.
Think about it being where you met them, where you and Dick were together in a state that is locked down, a state that is not mask free.
Yes.
So having no fear in going out and doing that, you are definitely God led.
Well, amen to that. Amen to that. That's exactly right. This is happening, Dick, this is happening in Maryland where you're at. This is happening in Virginia. These are places that people are like Mary said, are under some level of lockdown and control and mandates. But yet, if we're obedient to go and to follow what God is leading us to do, God can break through and bring these miracles. And I agree with you. This is a miracle. I mean, it's not a regeneration miracle, but it's a miracle that God is moving and he's positioning his people and connecting his people. I mean, it's just a great.
One last footnote on that. What's interesting is that we met a couple, right? The first day, they travel an hour and 15 minutes from Pennsylvania to come to church.
Wow.
We've got another couple that travels an hour. So I'm not suggesting this is, pervasive in the state of Maryland. It certainly isn't. If anyone in the Maryland area wants to learn more about the detail, they can certainly reach out to me through the email, Mary, which I forget. Mary, you may remember what the email is. What is our email, Mary?
Sharia Crime Stoppers. Oh, wait a minute. I don't even know. It's Spearpoint 911. It's been so long since I've given it up.
Right.
Spearpoint 911 at ShariaCrimeStoppers.org. Oh, my goodness.
So anyway, I'm just saying, as we make these connections, I don't want to give a lot of detail over the air here, but I'd be happy to connect people, or maybe people who know of a place could contact us and we can share, geographic information about how to connect. So it's out there if you get lucky, and with the help of God, we found it.
Amen. Amen. Here's the encouragement I shared on Sunday. I was just looking at one of the questions there. I think somebody else was asking about our email correspondence. So for me, by the way, folks, it's just info. If you want to send me an email, it's just info@tilproject.com, info@til for truth and love project.com. And then maybe you guys, Leo can give his later.
Yeah, I asked him to email me and I'll send it to him later.
You got it. And then somebody was saying, can you guys repeat that? What was the email address that you guys said for Sharia Crime Stoppers? maybe you have to put it on the screen.
Spearpoint 911 at ShariaCrimeStoppers.org.
Spearpoint?
Spearpoint 911.
Oh, okay, Spearpoint.
Like the
Interesting.
tip of the spear.
Like the tip of the spear. Okay, Spearpoint 911 at ShariaCrimeStoppers.com. All right, wonderful.
.org.
Oh, .org. Oh, geez. Okay, I'm going to really mess it up. .org. So, so what I mentioned on Sunday is I really believe that as God is consolidating and connecting his people, I really do believe that there's going to be an open door for us to move. But like Mary said, we got to be willing to go where God leads us to go. So whether it's in your own state or it's somewhere else. So folks, just pray and ask God to really move by His Spirit to get us situated. We got to get situated and connected in community for the things that are coming, which we're going to talk about tonight. Because guys, why don't we start with the like you said, Dick, there's breaking news that seems like every few hours, but let's start with breaking news over this weekend that happened, which is big news, which has changed the further escalated the dynamics of this fall. We were already talking about, and Leo and I talked about in the last program, the concerns we have they were planning Thursday, the day of siege at the White House. I don't think that happened, did it? Did I miss something?
No, they called that off and said they were going to have regional activities around the country.
Yeah, so interesting. Hey, I'm going to say prayers work. I'm going to give God credit. I'm going to go on a limb and say, I think our prayers work. Let's keep praying that God would thwart their plans, that their plans that they have would be upended. But anyway, we had some incredible things happen. And we're already anticipating violence in the fall. We're already anticipating violence up to the election. We're already anticipating violence after the election. But we had the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's been on the Supreme Court since 1993. She was a Clinton appointee. Before that, Jimmy Carter had put her on the D.C. Court of Appeals, I think it was. But she was a Bill Clinton appointee. And to be honest with you, I thought she had died. I thought she had died earlier. I'm not trying to be a mean spirit or anything like that, but I kept thinking she was in a coma or something because there was no news. There had been nothing. So it was a little surprising that they came out and said she's passed. But immediately, and if I can screen share here, I want to share with you guys some of the headlines here that happened because immediately the left just got unhinged, guys. Here's an article, great article from the Federalist. After RBG's death, left-wing activists promise violence if Trump appoints her replacement. And of course, the Democrats are playing the game.
Yeah.
2016, before Obama, you guys didn't confirm Merrick Garland, so therefore we're not going to. Well, the difference is, I think it was Senator Brasser from Wyoming. I saw an interview with him last night. Made a great point. The difference is, in that situation, there was a split between the White House and the Senate as far as who had the power. It was a Democrat Obama versus a Republican Senate. In this case, you have a Republican Senate and a Republican president. So why would the Republicans stop? Why would the Republicans not go forward? But yet, immediately, the left, this Iran, here's an Iranian dude, guys, Reza Aslan.
Oh.
And forgive me for the language. I'm going to go past the language. Maybe I'll bring it down. That basically, if they even try to replace RBG, we're going to burn the blank down. Here's another one. We're shutting this country down if Trump and McConnell try to ram through an appointment before the election. We saw more threats of riots. Here's basically saying we need more riot. Then she doubles down and says more bigger riots. We have more. This one here, you see a common theme that was posted by numerous folks on Twitter. This is war. This is war. Another one. This is war. This is war. Fight for her memory. Nothing else will do. I will never stop fighting for all you represented. Never. We have to fight like they never have fought before. This is war. Are we seeing a theme? But a question for Dick and Mary. Why shouldn't we allegorize what they're saying? Why should we believe that when they say this is war and let's burn the Supreme Court down, let's burn the White House down, let's burn the country down, why is it that we should take them literally? What do you guys think?
Well, because they've demonstrated that it's exactly what they're planning to do. They've already been burning down cities across the state of Washington. and Oregon, Portland. And so if they say they're going to do it, they've pretty much proven that's what they're planning to do. So I think, there needs to be a lot of alerts with the FBI, with the local law enforcement agencies. And we need to think about who they are, where they're at, and start now before we actually see it happen. I mean, we can't wait. We can't, hopefully that's what they're doing. Hopefully the DOJ on down to the local level is taking a look at that. Who's making the threats, where they're planning to make their threats. I don't think they're going to hit major cities like they have in the past. I think they're going to start hitting the suburbs like they've been threatening to do for quite some time. So that's my thought on it. I think we need to be ready.
Well, I think we need to be individually ready, not assuming, I think Mary's assumptions are good, but I don't think we should assume the FBI will be any better than they've been. And so it'll be a mixed bag. I think we need to protect our families. If you haven't armed yourself legally, you need to do it. If you haven't got ammunition, you need to get it. If you're going to be out and about, you need to be very, very, aware. I think if this was, 2 years ago and people were just throwing rhetoric around, it'd be one thing, but we're in the middle of violence now. So I guess my question is, if you have all of this intense social media, why wouldn't social media, would none of this be intercepted or identified as inciting riot? Shahram, you were actually, somebody 2 years ago said you were inciting a riot in Minnesota. That was before all this. And you didn't, I'm sorry, Shahram, but you didn't have access to 95 militias at the time. You were really not a threat. Somebody threatened you, I think the Attorney General maybe, that you were going to incite violence. By the way, you were making the same presentation that you've been making for years. So isn't what we just read intense incitement in the midst of violence, more incitement? Shouldn't something have happened to those people?
Well, this is the age we live in, right, Dick and Mary? By the way, I agree with both of you, both at the federal level and for individual responsibility, particularly in the light of the defund police conversations and the fact that law enforcement it is grossly outmanned. And I'm saying that as a former police officer, having looked at the situation and knowing the coverage of sheriff departments and things like that. But to your point, Dick, yeah, we were in Minnesota and we were having an event, and thanks to CARE and some of the local activists, they actually got us on the paper there, and they were claiming incitement, and they were filing reports with the Attorney General, who of course is none other than our buddy, I'm being facetious, Keith Ellison, a Muslim Brotherhood, Antifa promoting Keith Ellison. And so they were going to come after us. And I actually, I got legal representation. I was expecting charges. I was expecting they were going to actually bring charges against me for claiming to incite violence. And the good thing was we were smart. Thank God, God gave us wisdom. We actually had the entire presentation recorded, and I got affidavits from 15 people at the presentation, including the pastor, saying there was none of those words were ever said. It was all falsehoods, and we had the video. So so once we came public with that, then it went away. When we pushed back. But to agree with Mary's point, I was heartened by the fact that Attorney General Barr said this week that they're going to start asking to charge these looters and rioters and anarchists with insurrection. There's a term we haven't heard in a long time. But again, did Leo and I not say on the last program, this is insurrection, and we have to call it that. And so that was a positive news, although I'm with Dick that I'm not holding my breath. Also, did you guys see this? He came out and said Seattle, Portland, New York City, that these mayors, particularly he singled out Durkin in Seattle, Mayor Durkin, for allowing the CHOP zone, and said this is sedition. And recommended that they charge her with sedition. I'm like, yes.
Can we have a moment of thanksgiving?
Yes, thank you.
That word. We've been trying to get that word on the table for years. So that is very important. We need to see if that gets repeated and if they actually do it.
Yes.
That was, by the way, it is relevant to Constitution.
Yes.
Day. By the way, some of us, we want to give credit to E.W. Jackson for the reading of the Constitution. And in that reading, they actually read Article 6. which basically says what you're talking about, sedition. So if we can use the Constitution, as our fellow friend Philip Haney would say, we arm ourselves with the Constitution. If we could ever pursue the word sedition and do something about it, that would be massive. And the opposite is true. If we never deliver indictments on sedition, we might not be successful.
For sure, guys, because what they are doing is no longer, and Mary, you said this, it's no longer just inciting violence. The reason we can trust what they're saying is because they have shown that they're going to do it, and they've done it, and they have no recourse, and people have died. We're not talking about just the over $1 billion of price tag for all these cities that have been burned and looted and rioted and all this stuff, and that doesn't even include the cost to law enforcement. Doesn't include the economic cost. That's just in property damage. So it's not just physical damage. People have been murdered. We saw again the pro-Trump supporter in Portland that was assassinated publicly, and also we've seen police officers ambushed and killed and shot. Thank God those 2 police officers in LA County are out of the hospital. But Dick, to your point, I 100% agree that number one, at the local level, folks, you got to prepare yourself and your family. Number 2, I believe that we need constitutional militias. We got to be able to connect with those in our community who are organizing, who are, as the Second Amendment says, who are well regulated and organized. And also, as I said earlier this week when we did that conference for the sheriffs, we got to go as a group to our sheriffs and hold their feet to the fire and say, go with evidence. And by the way, Sheriff Richard Mack, who's going to be doing an event, Dick, in Lynchburg, Virginia, September 30th for the Constitutional Sheriff's Association, the CSPO, Constitutional Sheriff Peace Officers Association. They have a handbook that I have available. And so if anybody wants it, email us and I'll email you the handbook. It's a PDF. Take it to your sheriff. And the handbook is meant to be able to educate your sheriff on their constitutional duty. Oh, you have it. There you go, Mary. Wonderful. Email Mary too. So
yeah, I've had it for a long time. I actually pulled it out the other day and said, I need to order a couple more of those and hand them out.
Yes, because we really are identifying, guys, that for these sanctuary counties, these constitutional counties, for them to be effective, you've got to get either your sheriff or your district attorney, or maybe even some of your county commissioners, but certainly the sheriff would be the most critical role. And then also the sheriff has the authority to deputize. The sheriff has the ability to call out a posse, which is under the Posse Comitatus Act. And Dick and Mary, we had on the conference, we had Sheriff Richard Lamb, who was out of Arizona, who actually said, I have a document that he can share with other sheriffs that spells out the language of the deputizing or the calling forth of the posse, so that can be available when we're going to see more of these attempts to burn down. And Mary, you said it, not just our bigger cities, but now the suburbs of the cities. And we got to be able to organize now. So again, let's pray that from the top down, that there's going to be that push from the Attorney General down, from the President down, but also from the ground up, starting with us, our families, get together with folks in your church, train, get active if you don't have a local militia. But we gotta really see these rise up.
Shahram,
go ahead.
I was going to say, let's maybe use examples as we've been doing of things we've seen happening. So each state probably has an association of county sheriffs, and they typically have an annual meeting or they have training sessions. What we're seeing here, it won't be too specific, but in a particular state where they're meeting anyway, a person connected to your effort with the Patriot Church, that person as a leadership convinced the Sheriff's Association to stay for one more day and organize for the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association to come in and do a training. Now, why would sheriffs need training about their constitutional responsibility? Well, I guess they thought it was a good thing because they scheduled it. So you could replicate that. If you could find out about a county sheriff's association in your state, and you could reach out to uh, Richard Mack and the Constitutional Sheriff's Organization. Who knows? Maybe you could put that together. That's a big deal that that's happening. Now those sheriffs have no more an excuse. They have every understanding of their responsibility as from the Constitution. Obviously, they could be followed up with other training. That group, once they're trained on that, they certainly could be trained by Sharia Crime Stoppers, by our co-founder, David Boris, on the rest of the story about preparing themselves in their departments to deal with the threat of Sharia, et cetera. So
absolutely, absolutely. And also, as we seek to have secure patriot communities and networks formed in different areas, when those groups form, again, that group can be a catalyst, an activist to their sheriff. It's sort of and actually the groups that we saw, like Dick in Virginia, that group there in forming an assembly is actually now is going to be a liaison between the citizens, the constitutional militias, and the sheriff. And again, remember, the sheriff, a constitutional militia does not need permission from the sheriff to form, but they do want the cooperation of the sheriff to be activated in the event of an emergency, in the sense of, and I don't mean COVID, I mean as far as threats to our city, threats to life, property, liberty. And also, again, the sheriff can call out a posse, a citizen posse, which is really critical, I think, in regards to getting folks on the ground. And again, I last program, the program before that, I gave those examples. What we saw in North Idaho, what we saw in Snohomish, Washington, when 500 to 800 armed citizens show up at the behest of the sheriff or in cooperation with the sheriff, it repels, folks. It repels the bad guys. And Leo's article, by the way, if you guys have not read his article, let me show it here real quick, guys, which is Chaos Coming to Mayberry. Fantastic article. This is the one that was covered by Mark Levin on his radio show. Dick, I think you sent a link out for, didn't you send a link out for that?
Yeah, it was, yes, it was on a Monday night Mark Levin show from a couple of weeks ago. Yes, he read the article word for word. By the way, Mark Levin, obviously could have been an actor. The reading was very dramatic. It's a great way to share some information with somebody. He's a known quantity. Somebody hearing the words may or may not have read the article, but hearing it from Mark Levin is very, very compelling. And frankly, you can make the case that some of the conservative talk show hosts are still talking about big government and the debt. Those are all good things, but some of them haven't reached out into the notion of chaos and revolution. Well, Mark Levin is clearly in the mold that we talk about. And this article, him reading your article, as far as I'm concerned, put him right in the middle of what we're talking about, which is a big step.
Absolutely. And again, if we doubt the sincerity of the left to arm itself and to create chaos and revolution, insurrection, and violence, just look at the first line of the article. The majority of Americans still have no idea that they're living in the midst of a low-boil civil war. And very quickly, the temperature is being turned up. So I think I can't even imagine what this Supreme Court, because would you guys agree, Dick and Mary? Well, first of all, the president has said that it's going to be a female and that he's going to nominate that person by Friday or Saturday of this coming week. So presuming, just for fun, you guys want to take guesses to see, do you have any idea? I think it's going to be, is it Barrett?
Barrett, that's the one I was thinking.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Barrett because there was a strong indication that it was going to be Barrett before Kavanaugh.
Right.
And she's from what I've read, a strong Catholic, extremely pro-life, and extremely initial constitutionalist, meaning an originalist and a constitutionalist. So that's my pick. Dick, do you think the other two women that have said on the short list? I know President Trump did confirm Barrett and the other gal, not the 39-year-old one, but the other one. I should have known their names. I'm sorry, but any predictions, Dick, from you?
I think it will be a pro-life issue, and I don't really know the candidates that well. What I want to say is this is going to, the low boil will go to medium to high because of this issue.
Yes.
And the issue will bubble over. The 22-year-old girl who was in the streets throwing firebombs in Minneapolis or Portland, she's been trained so much on her reproductive freedom that she will be incensed. She will be so incensed that there's even a consideration they might change Roe v. Wade, that she will intensify her activity and she'll bring more of her women friends into the fray. I think, by the way, keep in mind that this is an indicator for the future. If Trump wins, he'll have the opportunity to appoint more justices, and we will
I have to correct you. I have to correct you. When Trump wins.
Thank you, Mary.
Amen.
All right, Mary. So specifically, when Trump wins, there will be other opportunities for him to appoint a pro-life, and this will boil over and keep boiling over. So I'm just thinking that, to me, this is an indicator of the pot boiling, and it tells me it's going to be a boiling. You know, it might slow down. It'll keep boiling over for the next several years when Trump wins.
Well, you guys, did you hear where Biden now is submitting his picks for a Supreme Court, and one of them is Stacey Abrams, my favorite from Georgia.
What has she done? What has she done?
She's been a terrorist for Georgia. That's what she's done.
Right. And so now,
she should have been governor.
First, it was intimated that she could be the VP pick. Now this, by the way, one of your supporters, one of our mutual friends, said if Biden wins, what is the chance that he could nominate Keith Ellison? Wouldn't that be a nightmare? Oh Lord, that is a absolute possibility. Well, although Biden has said now, because Trump came out, he said, "Oh, it'll be a woman. He'll be a woman for sure." So he's also going with that woman thing. But there was was it the something project? I saw an interview last night. I can't remember, the 3% project or something like that, said that if Biden didn't put his list out, that they were going to do it for him, because they said the list is so radical, like Stacey Abrams, that, so this is a critical issue. But Dick, I agree with you 100%. I think that this is going to boil over because not only should we be concerned about November 3rd and the election, but we should be concerned about post November 3rd, going into January. One of the best arguments that I heard last night on an interview was the fact that why should Republicans go forward with this nomination before January? Because presuming that there's going to be a contested election, presuming that the Democrats are going to play all their shenanigans with the mail-in votes and not certifying elections in certain places, presuming it's going to go to the courts, you do not want to have a potential 4-4, especially with wishy-washy Roberts that you can't trust where he's at. So I just think that it's critically important. Moving on, also, I was go ahead, Dick.
Well, I think this notion of 4-4, 5-4 is interesting. I think a lot of people think that the Constitution says something about the number of justices. And I remember reading an article which made the point that if the Democrats win, if they win the Senate, legislation can be used to change the number of, and they win the White House, legislation can be used to change the number of Supreme Court justices, the number, not who. They could take it up to 13 or 15. And the premise on that article was, okay, let's assume they do that. Well, then they will have the ability, as they've demonstrated before, to proactively decide what the First Amendment means. They will interpret in a very progressive, aggressive way what the First Amendment means. And they will also reinterpret the Second Amendment. And with those two things in place, there'll be no holding back. Local people who want to take away guns, local people who want to, put people in jail for hate crimes. Shahram, you'll be in trouble if that happens.
All of us.
Mary as well. Anyway, the point is, the good news is this is a learning experience. There is we do have this, having people focus on the Supreme Court and why Trump needs to be the president and will be the president, Mary. That's, to me, it's a good thing to focus on how important it is for him to make the right appointments and be reelected.
And guys, I honestly think that this is, how can I say this in a respectful way to Miss Ginsburg? I really think this is a gift from the Lord in regards to the timing of this, because I think this is heightened, because one of the things that we're very concerned about is the evangelical support for President Trump.
Yes.
And I think this is going to mobilize that base even more. They're going to be even more fired up because of how critical this is going to be, not just on the pro-life issue, as you said, but the fact that the Democrats, Dick, have already said that all bets are off. Everything's on the table, including impeaching, they said, President Trump, impeaching Attorney General Barr, and what they call, what you described as packing the court. So when you hear the term packing the court, it's exactly what Dick described. They want to change the number from 9 to 13 to 15, and then stack the court with, because obviously if that happens, if they legislatively change it, those are vacancies, right? So now the next president, if it's Kamala, let's say, after Biden steps down because of his mental acuity, then all of it, those are vacant seats, and then that president can come in and nominate number 10, number 11, number 12, and so forth and so on. So
think about 4 more Stacey Abrams on the court. Keep in mind, Kamala and Stacey and Andrew Gillum and Cory Booker, but Stacey and Kamala come from the same training program, the same connection to the pro-Marxist Liberation Road organization that Trevor Loudon talks about. So Stacey would be a great example of what is coming to the Supreme Court in multiple people if Harris is the president.
Wow. So
two things that I keep wondering about, and one of the things I learned is that you do not have to be an attorney to be appointed to the Supreme Court. I did not know that. I thought you'd have to have some understanding of law before you even were, at that point. That's why I think it's good that he's selecting judges that are the people that are current judges to be the possible next Supreme Court. The second thing is that I have a little bit of fear about is that, like what you just said, Shahram, is that this is going to energize the base of the evangelicals to make sure that they get out and vote because they see it as such a critical thing now. But is that also going to encourage the Biden supporters to now get re-engaged, to get out there more and fight for his side? Do you think they're going to be more engaged even more?
I agree with that. I think that's a fair statement. I think that it was lagging when you have someone like Biden as your nominee. I think they're expecting Biden to lose. I think they're expecting to try to play shenanigans with the elections. So yeah, I do think it energizes their base. The challenge is going to be when you see right now, like for example, when you see in Michigan, when you see in Minnesota, when you see some of these states where Republicans are almost neck and neck with, in the Senate races, and even the way that President Trump is polling. Again, not that we put that much stock in these polls anyway, but I think there's a lot of enthusiasm, but absolutely, Mary, that's a concern that it could also mobilize the radical leftist base. And by the way, interesting, you saw Ocasio-Cortez at the press conference with Chuck Schumer. So how much power does Ocasio-Cortez really have in the not just in the House, but because the rumor that I heard is she's threatening Schumer that she's going to run against him, that if they don't capitulate to the radical left of the party, that she's going to be his challenger for the Senate seat in the next New York, Senate race. So that was just something out there. I thought it was interesting, but I think again, we've underestimated, just like when we talked about Ocasio-Cortez being a key figure in mobilizing these youth radicals, like in the Sunshine Movement and other things like that. I think we've underestimated this individual and the squad and how radical they are, and actually how much base, what kind of a base, radical base they have. Even though it is a small percentage, it's still very dangerous percentage.
One other quick comment. I think we will see an escalation in that kind of violence. Abortion is a life and death issue, obviously, tragically. It has a massive impact on the individual woman and her ability to commit a life or death act, which is called murder. So that tells me that these people, it's so significant to them that they will react incrementally more violently than they will over income redistribution or minimum wage, whatever. This will be they will. My guess is that you'll see violence at a higher level over this kind of thing.
And Dick, spiritually, that also shows you just the evil that is behind it. Because when you see that fomenting, like we're seeing with Black Lives Matter, remember again when we exposed that BLM is not just a chant, it's actually a spiritual movement where they're chanting dead names to invoke their dead spirits from the dead to come. It's a spiritual battle as well. So when you see, and again, I can't even imagine what we're going to see. When you saw what happened with Kavanaugh, I can't imagine. Now, the one positive, and then I do want to ask you guys about President Trump's statement. I was really, again, heartened, some encouraging things again this week coming from the administration. But, you know, I do think one positive is by Trump appointing a woman, they're not going to be playing that attacking her, you know, character game. I think, you know, they'll go after, you know, the religion. They'll go after the religion. They'll go after the issues, obviously. But I think it's going to be harder for them, a little bit harder than what they were able to do with Kavanaugh to a disgusting level. But, you know, the Senate became a joke, and Lord knows what's going to happen. But certainly this has heightened and things up. So, folks, I don't know if you guys saw. Again, I was really heartened this week, and I want to just bring this headline up. You guys saw. I'm going to play just a quick video of the president giving a speech during Constitution Day. And again, this is Constitution Week. So this whole week is up to the 23rd, I believe it is Constitution Week. So we're celebrating the Constitution of the United States, an incredible document. But what I was really encouraged by, guys, was that the president actually went back to the Declaration and was going back to the birth certificate of the nation and talking about our founding. And so let me just play this quick video, get your comments on it. And then I have a few statements from his speech on critical race theory, which also plays into Leo's article. So let's watch this together, folks.
Thank you very much. Critical race theory is being forced into our children's schools. It's being imposed into workplace trainings, and it's being deployed to rip apart friends, neighbors, and families. For many years now, the radicals have mistaken Americans' silence for weakness, but they're wrong. There is no more powerful force than a parent's love for their children, and patriotic moms and dads are going to demand that their children are no longer fed hateful lies about this country. The left is attempting to destroy that beautiful vision and divide Americans by race in the service of political power. By viewing every issue through the lens of race, they want to impose a new segregation, and we must not allow that to happen. Today, I'm also pleased to announce that I will soon sign an executive order establishing a national commission to promote patriotic education. It will be called the 1776 Commission.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing what we heard from the president? Guys, when I was watching this speech, I kept thinking to myself, who wrote this speech? Because, you know, by the way, here's Leo's article. So let me actually bring up Leo's article. And when we get Leo on, we're going to have him to comment, because it's another doozy. Leo has just written incredible articles lately, as he always does. But here's the title of it: how your child is being groomed to be the next Antifa BLM rioter. And so, you know, he's talking about President Trump's executive order banning critical race theory from federal agencies. So this is a big step. The fact that, and here's something that caught my attention, the fact that the president, I believe, is trying to revive the word patriot. Here we are talking about creating secure patriot communities. Here we are talking about patriot churches. And then what do we see from the president of the United States? Reviving the word patriot and patriotism and patriotic parents and patriotic curriculum. And I mean, isn't this isn't this amazing? I'm just blown away. And then I kid you not, when he said we are creating this 1776 commission, the hairs on my hand stood up. I mean, I was just so moved by this spirit. I see this as a spirit from God to try to revive our nation, to try to take it back to its foundation. This is good news, folks. This is encouragement. But the battle is on. I mean, my goodness, this is going to be a battle. Dick and Mary, comments? What do you guys think?
No, I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. I'm just, you and I talked a little before we started the program, and it's amazing that he has to do an executive order to do this. The only fear is that the next president coming in, I'm going to say, if it's not him, I'm choking on those words, but I mean, they can undo all of his executive orders. So why isn't this something being put into place through the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos? Why isn't she taking this on head on and getting rid of all of this critical race theory, all of this BLM training that's going on? She's silent. Get rid of her. She's no good. So he's having to do it all. And yes, I am happy to hear that it's going to be the way he's put this engaged. And we needed it so long ago. It's just, he has to be reelected. We just have to get him in for another 4 years.
To have time. Yes, amen. Dick, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's just interesting when you look at all the damage that Barack Obama and to some degree George Bush allowed happening, so that this is pervasive, and now we need an executive order to remove this toxic poison from. I mean, the kids leave your house, they get on the school bus, they go home, they go to school, and they get this. I mean, that's incredible. But I think it's great. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He does things. So for him to say we're not going to fund a training in the U.S. government on critical race theory, acknowledges it's been there. And he's so that's interesting. I think it's significant to look at some of the pushback. There's conversation stories. I think Leo referred to the gentleman, I don't remember his name, it's in the article, who's been tracking places where critical race theory has been pervasive and where people seem to be about to ignore the president's mandate that we're not going to do it anymore. So, but when you think about it, I think we should come to grips with the fact that the U.S. military has been getting critical race therapy. And if I'm not mistaken, right down the street from where some people I know live, the U.S. Naval Academy might have been called on the carpet for still having it planned. So this is really basic. It's as dangerous as the pulling of Sharia training from the FBI and all of that. But critical race theory is so pervasive and terrifying, and that's what Leo's article is about. So yeah, it's great to see these things use the kind of actions that a president who understands his constitutional responsibility can take. I agree, Shahram, the speech was really important. Let's see who's on the commission. Let's see what the timetable for the commission is.
Yeah.
All the details are important, but, and again, just shows you how evil, we talked about evil. I think we could say Barack Obama.
Oh yeah.
And the thousands of people that he put into the deep state. By the way, he took his presidential appointees, converted many of those to full-time civil service. Right. You have hundreds of thousands of people in the Washington, D.C. area who go to work every single day, and their job at their level is basically to pervert whatever Donald Trump's trying to do. So God bless Donald Trump for taking action. And of course, Mary's right. We need more of that. We need another 4 years just to deal with the detail.
Amen. Amen. And to me, it really communicated just, again, the spirit of it. There's a spirit of turning back.
Yeah.
And this is a good sign, spiritually speaking, because this is what you see, as a pastor, I talk about this all the time. This is what you see in a biblical pattern is that when the Lord is working to turn the hearts of the people back to him, and of course, it is up to us to do that turning. There is a call for returning to our foundation, returning to our roots. And as you guys have said, no more is this critical than in the schools. And so just to share, again, going back to Leo's article, I just highly encourage everybody to read this article. It is incredible. But let me share with you just a couple of things. One is, here Leo points out some of the books that in Eastern Carver County Middle School in Minnesota, books titled White Fragility, The Heart of Whiteness. How is that not racist? But you know why it's not racist? Because look at this, guys. They actually have redefined the terms. And then there's a video here that I wanted to show you. Let me just go back to this. This is just a short clip here. Listen to this. Kids being taught to chant "No justice, no peace." They're being taught how to protest. You guys see this?
No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace.
Was that a school trip? What is that?
That's a school. Let me go back to that. Sorry, I didn't stop the video here. That's a school that is in Minnesota, and Leo covers this in his article, guys. And in the article, sorry, let me bring it up one more time. I shouldn't have gone away from it. Look at this. He brings up the fact that this school is actually, I think, one of the worst performing schools. Here it says Frost Lake Elementary ranks 830 out of 847 elementary schools in Minnesota. And yet this is what they're focusing their time on. And the deplorable Housewives Midwest commented, these children are being taught to be social justice warriors and professional protesters in a public school, and your tax dollars after a school like Frost Lake Elementary really should be concentrating on educating the kids instead of indoctrinating them, giving them dismal school rankings. And then here's the terminology. Look at the definitions. Interpersonal racism, when a white person takes their misinformation and stereotypes towards another group and performs an act of harassment. Racism, look at the definition of racism that they redefine. A system in which people of color as a group are exploited and oppressed by white people as a group. So it's only white people apparently that are racist now. So the blacks who are saying we want black power, again, I've said before, we should be against any supremacism. We should be against white supremacists. We should be against black supremacists. We should be against Asian supremacists. There should be no supremacy because we're all created in the image of God and we're all to be equal before God. And then Leo also does a great job going through how they've changed the word equality to equity. But guys, look at this chart. When they talk about privilege and particularly white privilege, I was shocked at this chart here. Look at this. Here it says, what you do is kids are being taught to grade themselves based on their quote unquote privilege. So if you're white, can you guys see this on the screen? You guys see my mouse? If you're white, give yourself an extra 25 points. If you're black, you're minus 100. Then sex, orientation, right? So if you're straight, gender, right? If you're male, female, you're plus 20, European, Jewish, and Christian. So there's our Judeo-Christian heritage. But if you're Muslim, look at that. You're minus 50 off the bat. And attractiveness, size. And then what you do, look at this down below. So now as you add up the score, the more points you have, the more privileged you are. And therefore, you need to be brought down. The less points you have, so if you're black, if you're homosexual, if you're a Muslim, if you're Native American, you are more underprivileged and you need to be propped up and brought up. So this is not equality, this is equity. And equity is based on critical race theory. And Leo does a great job of going back to Herbert Marcuse and talking about how Marxism has come into these schools, with Columbia and our universities. And it's just a great article. And then it talks about Islamophobia and then the fact that Dr. Muhammad Khalifa, it says that they're not, see, this is what we talked about, guys, how the Muslims are then joining with the Marxists and the socialists and the communists, infiltrating the schools using this concept. But of course, we know their goal is to ultimately uplift the Muslim students as the highest underprivileged. And so that this guy Khalifa has this doctrine. Let's read a few of these bullets. We want to institutionalize ways of gauging or measuring Muslim students belongingness. I can't even say that. Belongingness and anti-Muslim bigotry in your schools. Complete an annual equity audit, not equality, equity. Similar to race work that some schools do, have Muslim students speak out in other school spaces where they can express their identity, speak about experiences of Muslim life. Recognize that Islam is not a religion in the sense that Western Europeans separate faith from other aspects of life. Wait a second. Hey, Dick and Mary, this is what we've been saying for years. Islam is not a religion. It's a political ideology. And now they're admitting it. You see that? They're actually admitting it.
That's it.
Accommodate aspects of Muslim life in school. So, wait a second. So Islam is not just personal in your home. We want it to be public in the schools and government. But you Christians, you Judeo-Christian folks, you try to bring your religion, no way, separation of church and state. And look at this, infuse curriculum and school activities with intellectual traditions that originate in the Muslim world, acknowledge the origin of knowledge that came from the Muslim world. So this is just shocking. And of course, Leo then goes on to talk about the 1619 project, which, by the way, the president's speech, I have it here. It's a phenomenal speech again about critical race theory, about discrediting right here the 1619 project, and how even I think it was wasn't the New York Times or something had discredited it. So this is, again, it was a phenomenal speech, a phenomenal exposing of what is happening. But to Mary's point, if we do not strike this out of the school systems, and I agree with Mary, it should be top down and bottom up. Right. So yes, school boards, yes, your county administrators, your county elected officials, your state legislators, absolutely. But what is the point of the Department of Education and Betsy DeVos if they don't issue a mandate that that federal funding will be withheld from schools? And what I said to you guys before we went on air, that I think that where Trump could affect this is withhold funding from universities, colleges that are pushing this. Of course, those will argue, well, that's, the Congress holds the purse strings and Congress should do it. But I think that through some measures, they could withhold some federal funds for these universities that are spewing out Marxist, their Marxist indoctrination camps. Thoughts, Dick? I think you had your hand up.
Well, a couple things. I think when Leo joins us, hopefully in a few minutes, we can go back into the article. There's a lot of rich topics there, including the fact that the blending is now occurring. First, the blending white privilege with people who are, and Islamophobia. The other thing they're blending is white privilege. If you saw the phrase in there, it's Christian.
Oh, yes.
Privilege. So there's a Christian privilege associated with whiteness, associated with hate of people of color. So there's a definite drawing of the lines. Anybody who's listening to this program that hasn't already figured out from you and Leo that the target here is Christians. The target is Judeo-Christian principles. The target is all the negatives is really powerful. I did see if you're short, it's a -10. So that's kind of funny.
Wait a second. Did it say that? Because that means I am underprivileged.
I was going to say, you and I somebody maybe they won't hurt us because we are short. If you go down to the bottom side,
I see that right there. Short, tall, +10.
Right. So, I also think you can look at the bottom. Look at the bottom of the other list. If you're trans, you're -500.
Wow.
There you go. If you're gay, you're -150. If you're Muslim, you're -50. So there's a definite leaning here. Yeah, if you're black, you get -100. I got it. It's a black thing. But really, it's really focused on the oppressed people, the victims, the Muslims, the transgender, the genderqueer.
Yeah.
I'm not sure all these distinctions. But yeah, that's really interesting. Attractiveness is an issue.
Yeah, look at the country. Look at the country. If you're from the Middle East, -600. Wait a second. I was born in the Middle East. So
you're okay.
I'm like the most underprivileged of anybody.
You need to carry this with you when they want to come after you.
Yes.
Hanging around your neck, saying, wait a minute.
Don't definite how privileged you are.
Yes. But to Dick's point, guys, if you're white +25,
bias in this, obviously. By the way, if you're a Christian or a Jew and a white male, they're coming after you. They're coming after you.
You're the worst. You're the worst. Yeah, I have no idea what a plutocrat is. Oh, that's if you have lots of money.
By the way, we've had situations in Michigan where people were at a bus stop and people came over to harass them and maybe actually hurt them physically. And they actually asked the question, are you Muslim? I mean, there's enough Muslims in Michigan, so they would ask that question. And if you were not Muslim, you were physically accosted. So I can see it's almost like a column A, column B Chinese restaurant. You fill out a card, guy comes up to you and you check, he asks you 10 questions. You check off the boxes, and depending on your score, you are then a candidate for, some type of assault or not.
Well,
So
you both know that I'm sitting here underprivileged with the two of you. I might have to demand a few things every now and then,
because just being a woman, right?
Being female, yeah.
Just being a female,
But,
exactly. But this is where we're at, and sadly though, here's the sad thing, is that this is not just happening in the government. This is not just happening, obviously, in our schools, which is the worst environment of what we're seeing with the indoctrination, and not just indoctrination, but the mobilizing of our kids, as we saw in that video, to become, trained activists from, kindergarten and elementary school. This is absolutely critical. Why and you guys have said it. Really, the president's efforts are so late in the game that where this should have been 2-3 years ago at the minimum. But and this has been going on under Obama. But at least they're going to hopefully make that push. And this is why, folks, we got to pray for our president and pray for the re-election, because we need more time. We need more time to build these Patriot networks. We need more time for Patriot churches. We need more time for the turning back of the hearts of the people to our foundation. But this is just caustic. This is just evil division. And the fact that we as conservatives get accused of being divisive is a joke. But what I was going to say was, sadly, this is happening in many of our churches, where critical race theory has now infiltrated the pulpits, and you have pastors teaching on critical race theory. We had David Platt. You guys remember when President Trump went to that church to get prayed for?
Yeah.
That was David Platt. David Platt, it teaches critical race theory from his pulpit.
Well, Leo, I want to give credit to Leo. He's not here with us yet, but Leo is amazing as how he pulls together things that you would never see in one single article. He has a video of the Catholic priest demanding that the sheep in the audience repeat their support for the critical race theory. He actually reads it. If we have that, we might want to find it.
Yeah, race baiting the churches right there, guys.
Very, very compelling. This is a Catholic priest.
Should I play this?
Please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Let's play this.
Yes. Do you affirm that white privilege is unfair and harmful to those who have it and to those who do not? Yes. Do you affirm that white privilege and the culture of white supremacy must be dismantled wherever it is present? Yes. Do you support racial equity, justice, and liberation for every person? Yes. Do you affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person? Yes. Therefore, from this day forward, will you strive to understand more deeply the injustice and suffering white privilege and white supremacy cause?
Wow.
Yes. Will you commit to help transform our church culture to one that is actively engaged in seeking racial justice and equity for everyone? Yes. Will you make a greater effort to treat all people with the same respect you expect to receive? Yes. Will you commit to developing the courage to live your beliefs and values of racial justice and equality? Yes. Will you strive to eliminate racial prejudice from your thoughts and actions so that you can better promote the racial justice efforts of our church? Yes. Will you renew and honor this pledge daily, knowing that our church and our community, our nation and our world will be better places because of our efforts? Yes. Let us pray.
Shahram, let me.
What I would like to have hoped is that everybody in the pews got up and left when he started that, because I watched that about 2 weeks ago. I found it and saw it. I think I sent it to Leo, but it is so incredible They stood up there and said, you all will answer yes to this. And we will go through each one of them. And all I could say, and having all of those pictures behind and at the altar, I'm sorry, what?
Well,
Criminals.
let me, couple things I think it's really relevant. First of all, that is not an individual priest. That priest is an employee of the archdiocese. The archdiocese, archbishop is reports to the cardinal, reports to the pope. That is the Roman Catholic Pope's position. There's no question worldwide.
Yep.
And there's really no room for opposition. In a couple of cases where there was, it was quickly shut down. Number two, can you imagine Shahram and Mary? Let's assume that priest next Sunday got up and talked about male supremacy and the treatment of women under Islam. Can you imagine if he went down the list of how women are treated by the mosque and imam down the street in American cities?
Won't happen.
Wouldn't that be incredible? And of course, it will not happen.
Won't happen.
Because of the position of the Roman Catholic Church on Islam, which, Shahram, there's nobody better than you in talking about that. So that same priest could be involved in interfaith. And finally, if at the end of that indoctrination session, the priest had said, will you vote for Joe Biden?
Right.
Okay. He could have said yes, and the crowd could say yes. So this is an alert. We love our Roman Catholic brethren. You need to be talking between now and the election about the issues that could potentially break open the Catholic vote. The Catholic vote, without not being challenged by enlightened conservative Catholics, will go to the Democratic Party. It's just the way it works. However, if the Catholics who are on the call and can speak up on a regular basis about abortion, about these issues, there's a chance that the Catholic vote, which in states like Maryland and Michigan, it's overwhelming power of the Catholic Church and the implication for voting. So that's a really powerful video. And again, thank you, Mary, if you're the one that found it and sent it to Leo, and Leo publishing it. That's massive.
Yes.
It is so incredible to think, just with the analysis you just gave, Dick, how many other churches did that and didn't film it? How many other people sitting in the pews went through that same scenario? How many of them walked out? How many of them never returned to that church? We'll never know the answer to that, but that's what I hope, is so many of them walked out, said, you're not getting another dime from me. And that's where we need to hurt these churches that do that.
Yes. Yes, guys, you guys are absolutely right. And thank God, Mary, that many walked out of that individual church. Dick is absolutely right. But the position of the Roman Catholic Church in pushing the narrative, and notice this priest again used the word equity, racial justice and equity, not equality. So the position of the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican, not individual Catholics per se, is the fact that there is a push towards destroying or bringing down white privilege, white supremacy, and to your point, Dick, Christian white privilege. Mm-hmm. So we've seen this value with the refugees. We've seen this value with the support of the LGBTQ transgender. We've seen this value with environmentalism, where the Pope is talking about how we're, quote unquote, destroying the planet, and on, of course, with Muslims, as you said. So it is an absolutely diluted Vatican. It is an absolutely deceived Vatican and Roman Catholic structure there. That is, think about it as a white priest standing on the altar, as Mary said, and basically denouncing your own whiteness, your own how you're created. It is the epitome of foolishness, and it is sacrosanct. It is absolutely sacrilegious, in my opinion, that they stain the altar that is a place to preach the word of God, to preach the nature of God as creator, and as a place where people can come and receive, regardless, this is the thing, regardless of color, race, creed, male, female, the gospel is available to all. And healing, forgiveness, salvation, available to all. The gospel is colorblind. So this is absolutely outrageous, but Dick, you are absolutely right. This is fueling their political agenda. And I'm just praying that that smaller percentage of the Catholics, like you said, that are conservative, will be very vocal. They'll be the vocal minority and push back against, just like as we are, just like I as an evangelical, we're in the minority in this one sense, as far as pushing back against the majority of these churches that are pushing this critical race garbage. But we have to be that vocal voice.
You know, there was, I'm not trying to promote anybody in Hollywood because most of them are idiots, but there's one actor, Morgan Freeman. I don't know if you guys have seen this at all, but Morgan Freeman, I kind of like him as an actor. In 2005, he did a video that said, and somebody was, I think it was Chris Wallace, I believe, maybe not, maybe Mike, but anyways, was asking him about racial injustice and about the problems going on. And this was back in 2005. And he said, stop calling me black and I'll stop calling you white. It's pretty simple. And it seems so logical and so simple and such an easy task to do. You know, if we all stop looking at each other for the color of your skin and just start treating each other as individuals and what they do, who they are, and understanding, you know, what they want to be, instead of you're black and I'm white. Get rid of the divide. Like you said, Shahram, you talked about the divisiveness of what's going on in this country. And there was even Herschel Walker just recently said, I'm tired of everybody going to slavery. It's why am I a black man? Why can't I just be considered a man?
Yes.
And it is so simple to think about how we stop this racial garbage going on.
Well, and Mary and Leo's with us. Welcome, Leo.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here.
Good to see you. Leo, we've been talking about your article for the last while, and I think Mary and Leo can comment to this. Good timing. That in his article at the beginning, when he talks about the history of the critical theory, and then throwing in the race part, because they have to add the race part to be able to bring this division. They see the impact.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
They knew that was America's weak spot, was race relations. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. That book, Color, Communism, and Common Sense by Manning Johnson, which was written, I think, around 1957 or 58. And it was regurgitating his experience from the 1930s and 40s. And so this communist plot to overtake America by dividing it along racial lines and spurring these race riots goes all the way back to at least the 1930s. That's astonishing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's very clear to me that when they're able to, again, the two elements that they've been able to really co-opt that are institutional, and then two that are I would say more modern in the sense of their impact. So the institutional, number one, is education and the education system, and number two, the churches. So they've been so well able to infiltrate this stuff into those institutions. But then what do we have recently? We have then the corrupting of the media that basically has become, I read an article the other day that said it looks like the media is running Joe Biden's campaign because Joe Biden doesn't know where Joe Biden is.
Right.
So it looks like the media is running his campaign. So it's not even any longer even a propaganda arm. They are the Democrat Party, basically, the left. And then the second thing is now these corporations. I'm so sick and tired of the NBA, and I'm trying to deal with my 15-year-old and telling him about Black Lives Matter this and equity this, and I'm thinking, I tell my son, these are spoiled millionaires. They have, talk about privilege, right?
Yes.
They had the percentage of athletes in these leagues, in football, in baseball, and particularly in basketball. And the majority of basketball, I think 70 some odd percent, almost 80% are Black. And so they have the best spots. And most of these are millionaire athletes. And they're sitting there. LeBron James is telling us that he's afraid of the police.
Right.
give me a break, LeBron. Give me a break. This is so, and then now with the cancel culture of the corporations, that this is shoved down your throat with the whole BLM thing. So we gotta do what we can to take back. And I think that in the Catholic Church, the silent minority, in the evangelical church, to some extent, the silent majority. But this is why I argue we're going to need a patriot marketplace, because these corporations, if they begin to, we know the technocracies are, Google,
Right.
Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, they're already banning us. But if the corporations begin to play this game of going after that, Leo, we just showed that incredible list that you had in your article about the schools and how they're rating privilege.
Oh, the worksheet, yeah, the
worksheet.
survey,
Yeah.
where
And
they were measuring each student's level of privilege, right?
That's right. And we all decided that I'm the most underprivileged on the panel. That Mary is second, but I'm the most, because for being from the Middle East, I get minus 600 points according to that thing. So I'm the most underprivileged. Yeah, exactly. So,
but you lost points for switching from Islam to Christianity.
I major points there. Dick and I got a few points back for being short, but other than that,
I get a few points for being ugly. Did you notice they even rated you on your level of attractiveness?
Exactly.
Yeah. I didn't see a lot of comments on baldness. They missed that one.
Yeah, exactly. But so this is so critical. Anyway, so we were just talking about the great article. We've covered what's coming up. So here's a question that I have.
Just one more thing on that survey sheet. Hold that thought.
You got it.
I have found, since the article came out, I updated it just this morning, late morning, that white privilege, Christian privilege, and all the other privileges worksheet, that's not just being handed out to schools in Minnesota. Some guy read my article and got curious and started doing some of his own research, and he found the exact same privilege survey being given to students in New York, Saratoga Springs, New York High School. Exact same survey was given to them. So my guess is this thing has made the rounds, pretty good to schools around the country. And there we go. See, attractiveness.
Yeah.
Attractiveness. If you have an attractive face,
overweight,
you get. Yes.
Overweight and ugly face. If you're overweight and ugly face, that's terrible. I mean, how is that being? How is that being?
And I'm short too, so the size matters. So
yes,
I get minus 10 points for being short.
So this is incredible. And I was telling Dick and Mary that we've seen this in government. 2 years ago, I had one of our supporters who worked for the Department of Social and Health Services in Washington State email me a very similar survey that they were doing in outlining the level of privilege and what you got to be struck down, if you're over privileged versus underprivileged. So this is what, as Leo, you did a great job pointing out, this is what equity is. This is the definition of equity. So when you hear these terms, you got to understand what they mean. They do not mean equality as in the eyes of God. They mean equity as far as critical race theory. And then, of course, we went through the list, Leo, of also Khalifa and the
oh my God, yeah.
And that was incredible there too. So this is what we're dealing with. And again, we talked about some solutions earlier, guys, at the local level. So Leo, if you have any other thoughts, we talked about the importance of local. By the way, I covered also some positive things from President Trump this week with his speech on Constitution Day, being that it's Constitution Week. I remember one thing I was going to cover real quick before I turn it back to Leo is that, Dick, if you remember, one of the things I covered in my presentation that people need to understand and why I was excited about the whole 1776 commission and not a 1787 commission, when the Constitution was formed, was the fact that the Declaration has those incredible 4 anchors that people need to understand. Based upon the phraseology of the laws of nature and nature's God in the first paragraph that the founders articulated as the revealed will of God in creation and the revealed will of God in Scripture. And that was, number one, the rights that are given to us are from God and are unalienable. You can't put a lien against them. You can't touch them because they're God-given. Number two, government is there to simply secure those rights. They have no right to alter, change them, or add new rights. Number three, that the consent for the governing body is given by us, the governed. So folks, in America, when you hear a pastor, and I preached on this on Sunday, guys, when you hear a pastor next time quote to you, well, we just need to obey the government, render unto Caesar what is due unto Caesar. Remind them that in America, we are Caesar. We actually technically are Caesar because we are formed, we the people, first 3 lines, words in the Constitution, we the people have given our consent. So therefore, we have simply extended authority to this government. That's the way this government was formed. And that's what Trump was talking about with the importance of being self-governed, which we see. And then finally, the 4th anchor is when government becomes abusive of those rights and despotic and tyrannical and seditious. There's a new term again we're talking about. Thank God that they're using.
Yes.
By the way, somebody asked a question about Mayor Durkin. If I can just quickly answer that. This is the word sedition, S-E-D-I-T-I-O-N. That's exactly what Attorney General Barr wants to charge Mayor Jenny Durkin in Seattle for her support, condoning, allowing the autonomous zone to be built, which is completely seditious because you're talking about forming a government within a government. They formed an autonomous government within the United States of America. And I just wanted to make sure that they understood that that's what that he's trying to charge her. It's very important that that we fuel those terms. So when the government becomes seditious, it's the right and the duty, the declarations of the people, to throw off such a government or try to alter or abolish it as necessary. And in our case, we want to restore our republic. But this is where the importance of the local, the sheriffs and so forth is important. So with that note, I'll turn it back to Leo. And, you know, this is an incredible conversation about what we need to understand, what's coming up in the fall. And I just want to make sure people remember, pray for this election, pray for the president, pray for his life, by the way, and pray that we got to be ready beyond November 3rd, because November 3rd is just the beginning of the mayhem that we're going to see.
I think you're right, Shahram. One other thing I would like to add just on the topic of the critical race theory, something that did not make it into my article because it was getting so darn long. Barack Obama in 2011 used Executive Order 13583 to direct government-wide diversity and inclusion training, which included the implementation of Marxist critical race theory training in all federal agencies, including the military. So he basically seeded this revolution into the Pentagon before he left. He left his mark in the Pentagon, all the key law enforcement agencies, FBI, DOJ, Homeland Security, by getting critical race theory into those agencies and into our military, by purging the military of nearly 200 top-level officers who left the military, the top level, with only officers who had loyalty to democratic socialist ideals, globalist ideals. And think about the way the military operates. The reason that our military has been so successful is not only because it is well funded and well equipped, but it's a very any military, if it's going to be successful, it has to be a very tightly wound, top-down command structure. So you put Marxist critical race theory into the middle of that, and all of a sudden, what do you have? You've sowed the seeds of dissension and division by pitting one group against the other, gays against straight, men against women, blacks against whites. And so he literally prepared the military for what we see today. Now, I think Trump has tried to restore that, especially in the way of funding and equipping the military. But I don't think Trump has had a clue until very recently that this Marx critical race theory was embedded in there, dividing people up against each other and sowing these Marxist seeds for eventual revolution against our country. So I wanted to just bring that out, that Obama, in my opinion, is even more evil than we thought he was back when he was our president, because he was not just taking care of business for right then, but he was stacking the deck for the next president. And he thought that he was, throwing the football down the field for Hillary to catch and continue the revolution. I think it was planned to be a completely peaceful revolution to change our system of government. But instead, Trump intercepted the ball, and Trump stands against everything Obama stands for in terms of globalism. We saw it in his speech to the UN in September last year. We saw it again in his speech to the World Economic Forum in December of last year, where he laid out the path that he saw for humanity going forward. He said the future lies not with globalism, but with patriotism. Remember that? And he said that this was the best path forward, not only for America, but for every nation. And so I really think that he was unprepared for the level of opposition that he walked into that on January 21st of 2017 when he took office. He knew there was a swamp. He did not have a clue as to just how deep or wide that swamp was, that it started at the international level with the UN, the International Monetary Fund, the World Economic Forum. It ran from there through NATO and into Washington, D.C. It ran through every state capital and down into almost every city hall in this country. That's the deep state. And he's getting a clue now as to just how deep it is. And there's an army of bureaucrats, army of teachers, liberal teachers, army of law enforcement officers who all buy into this stuff. It's really amazing. They don't represent the majority of the population of this country, but they definitely represent the majority of the people with power. Okay, so that's what we're up against. And so that just kind of finishes off maybe the topic of my latest article. I did want to talk a little bit about this ongoing coup. I've been researching it a little bit more this week, and there's this group called the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, which I think, has Claire Lopez talked about that on our webinars? Or
yes, and Trevor Loudon has as well, right? And its impact on various states and various.
Have you showed the video of the Freedom Road Socialist political director? Her name is Steph York.
No, we have not. We have not.
That is a very powerful video. I think Trevor made the video, but it quotes her in her own words. If I can find it here, if you'll hang on just a minute.
Hey, real quick while Leo's looking for that. Dick, our friend is talking about, again, just encouraging, earlier in the program, Leo, we were talking about the importance of the sheriffs to be able to counteract this coup that you're talking about, and the power of the local. So again, folks, Mary had the sheriff's handbook. And so I just encourage you guys to email her or email me to send you the PDF of it. And I would, if you can, get a few people together and go visit your sheriff this next week. And September 30th, which is coming up in 9 days. Is today the 21st? Yeah, 9 days is where we have the event in Lynchburg, Virginia. The CSPOA, which stands for the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association. Sheriff Richard Mack, big event. They're having sheriffs from all across the country come. And so invite your sheriff if you can go. I don't think they're doing it online, but they're going to record it, and then they're going to have some information about it. So yeah, so just if you go to the website, the CSPOA website, there should be information on it. And there should be an email contact, something like that, to be able to invite information to send to your sheriff, invite them. If nothing else, get the handbook into their hands. So just while I was looking for that, I wanted to mention that.
Okay, yeah, I found it here.
We've got an attendee that's talking about the course, and what I learned from it a few weeks ago when I was looking at it is that for any sheriff, it's a free course that they can be at. They can come in and it's free for them. So I encourage everybody to reach out to your sheriff in your area and ask them to take a look at it and try to attend. Sorry, Leo.
Yes.
No, that's fine. So we've got Miss Steph Yorick. Okay, she's the political secretary of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, which, as we know, is a Maoist Chinese communist organization operating freely right here in the good old USA. She said, and I quote, it's on this video put out by Trevor, quote, "Mao and Stalin were both Marxist-Leninist. That is how I identify as Marxist-Leninist as well," unquote. On the day President Trump was inaugurated, Steph Yorick vowed in a speech to protesters on the Washington Mall to, quote, "make this country ungovernable," unquote. She's married to fellow activist, also a woman, Jess Sundin. So she, a woman, is married to a woman, Jess Sundin, who's also an activist at the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. And Jess Sundin said she has been a communist on this video. She says she's been a communist for more than 20 years. And she leads a militant group called Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar. According to Chicago Freedom Road Socialist members Frank Chapman and Joe Eisbaker, Justice for Jamar is the movement that launched the nationwide rebellion starting in Minneapolis in late May, early June. She said there was an intense, this is Jess Sundin speaking on the video, saying there was an intense high level of organizing all night and all day. I can't tell you the joy it brought to all of us to see the 3rd precinct destroyed, unquote. And she took credit for the burning, her organization. She said, and I quote again, "There were marches, there were rallies, and lots of buildings were destroyed, some by fire, some by brute force. Sometimes it was golf clubs, other times it was baseball bats. And a lot of folks wanted to get out to the other parts around our city where there was really pitched battles going on. And we support all of that, pitched battles with the police. And I want to be absolutely clear as an organizer," she said, "those night demonstrations, the emptying of the police department, the emptying of Target and other major stores was absolutely tied to and part of our movement," unquote. Now, to sit and listen to this woman bragging and boasting about burning down a city and attacking cops, and to know that she walks freely on the streets of whatever city she lives in. I don't know if she lives in Minneapolis or she was just imported there to lead the uprising, is really galling and upsetting to me. You know, what is going on with Bill Barr in your opinion, Shahram? Why is he not having this woman arrested and her wife as well, who openly admit that A, they're communist, and B, you know, you're allowed to be communist in this country. The Supreme Court has ruled that. You can write things about how lovely communism is, right?
Right.
But the minute you take it from theory to practice and actually start inciting and organizing a violent uprising, that is a clear violation of American law and the Constitution. And so I don't understand why people like her are not behind bars, as well as the people who are sending her money.
Well, Leo, I agree 100%. We were talking about earlier in the program that we were surprised and somewhat encouraged that Barr was ordering his district attorneys at the state level to look at charges of insurrection finally for some of these thugs in the network, because
His U.S. attorneys?
The U.S. attorneys, yeah, he was directing the U.S. attorneys because they you know, the domestic terrorist doesn't seem to do much. And as we just said, with the language of sedition that he talked about with the mayor in Seattle and Portland and in New York and stuff like that. So, but I agree with you that this is, by the way, a function of the federal government, because the Constitution is very clear that they are to strike down. In fact, Article 1, Section 8 in Clause 15 and 16 talks about not only the duty of the federal government to stamp out insurrection, but also it actually says that the federal government has a duty to rise up militias. Here's our militia conversation, to stamp out insurrection. So what are we seeing? Insurrection. That's what you're talking about. But why are they not in jail? Why are they not actually following through? You know, I asked Dick and Mary the question earlier about when the left says after Ginsburg dies, if Trump nominates, we're going to burn the country down. You know, why should we take him seriously? Because they're doing it.
Right.
So this is baffling to me. If Barr and Trump do not take this to the next level of actually starting to, I mean, I would love to see, and I don't mean that in a celebrating evil way, but I would love to see Durkin and some of these mayors put behind bars, some of these governors for violating the rights and tyranny, to actually be indicted. I was having a conversation last night about the fact that if we take evidence and present it to our sheriff, the sheriff has the ability to go to a grand jury and convene a grand jury or request a convening of a grand jury, present evidence of sedition and insurrection and you know, abuses of our rights, and then the grand jury indict. So we're actually looking for one sheriff, one area, one state that can do this. If the feds won't, then you know, that's the solution from the local level. But I'm there with you, and I pray that Barr signaling this. And by the way, the other thing that was very shocking what Barr said, you guys see this, is when he said, you know, the lockdowns have violated civil rights as much as comparing it to slavery.
Yes.
That was a huge.
I'm telling you, he could not have said better things. He could not have sounded better. We're just waiting for the action now.
That's right. That's exactly right. We need the action now. Put action to the words, Attorney General. Put action to the words, President Trump.
And what about this Colonel Richard H. Black? Have you seen the video that he put out? He's a retired colonel, former head of the Army's Criminal Law Division.
I have not.
He's urging the president to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. This act is, he said, among the most fundamental of all American laws meant to ensure domestic tranquility and put down violent insurrections. And it's been used 22 times throughout American history. First by Thomas Jefferson, and most recently by George Herbert Walker Bush, to do such things as stop riots, end labor disputes, and threats to the peace. And he went on to quote from a letter by two retired lieutenant colonels who wrote an open letter to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, urging him to use military force to remove the president from the White House if he doesn't leave voluntarily on January 20th. This was a call for military insurrection based on conjecture about Trump not leaving office. And if you combine that with this election integrity project, have you heard about that?
Yes, yes, yes.
Where they're actually simulating war gaming possibilities of what could happen, scenarios that could happen if we end up in a constitutional crisis, which they seem to be preparing us for, right?
Yes, yes.
Over this election, because all the mainstream media, from Mark Zuckerberg and social media giants to the Washington Post, New York Times, they've all run articles saying that Trump could be declared the winner on election night, but don't take that too seriously, because it's going to take days, weeks, possibly months to get all the votes counted. Now, since when are we, America, the most powerful, richest country in the world, are unable to hold an election? See, we're unable to hold a legitimate election suddenly. Why? Because they're going to say COVID. How convenient. How many things has COVID been aiding them in? It's unbelievable.
Absolutely, Leo. Absolutely. To your point of the war gaming, because not only are they preparing for the scenario of delaying, and I said to Dick and Mary earlier, this is why, conjecture, of course, is this is why Trump needs to nominate for the Supreme Court, and needs to be, and the Senate needs to confirm that nominee. Probably it won't happen by election day, but it can certainly happen by the end of the year. And so even as the battle is going to go on in the courts, and it'll start probably in the lower courts, contention over the election, it could carry on to the Supreme Court. And so, but they're also wargaming post-January. They're wargaming Pelosi, and what's going to happen in the House. And the Republicans are now wargaming with Trump staying in there until the election gets certified. I mean, so what we're going to see is the spillover onto the streets. And this is why, like you said, there needs to be preparation for the insurrection that is coming, because they have absolutely discredited. And you said it in the last webinar that we did, I think the last one, the very things that they accuse us of are the very things they themselves do. They accuse us on our side of, undermining the elections and tampering and, whatever. And yet it's all them. It's all them. Hillary was the one who was colluding with the Russians. The DNC was colluding with the Russians. They're trying to now.
And now she's telling Biden, do not concede under any circumstances.
That's right.
At the same time, they're accusing Trump of not conceding if he should lose. I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
But that's the war gaming.
But okay, what it all is a big setup for, it looks like to me, is you've got the top military brass in on it. You've got the intel community, Brennan Clapper and all those types, and Christopher Wray, head of the FBI. They're all in on it. They're all bad actors. And they've got this gentleman named Norm Eisen. He's Obama's former White House ethics czar. And he wrote this book. It's literally called The Playbook for how to engineer color revolutions. color revolutions. This is the name for a type of revolution that we're experiencing right here in America right now. And these color revolutions were used by the US military to remove out of favor dictators around the world for years, especially in Eastern Europe. And a color revolution is different from a traditional military revolution. They don't come in all guns blazing and try to conquer the White House, with tanks. It's more subtle. They use mass protests out in the streets. They use their control over the media to keep the people kind of in the dark. They call the protests what? Mostly peaceful. Unless you watch certain segments of Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and alternative media, you're not going to know what? You're not going to know that we're in the middle of a revolution right now.
Right.
And these color revolutions, they use protests out in the streets, okay, the useful idiots. They use the media to sort of like run cover for it all. And they base the entire thing under the guise of protesting or challenging the legitimacy of an election. That's what they did in these Ukraine, Milosevic in Serbia. They did this a lot in Eastern European countries, but also other countries around the world. And they're now using all of that built up knowledge through running these operations in country after country after country. And they're turning it within to do it in our own country against a duly elected president. It is really diabolical.
Right.
And this joker, Eisen, he's also an expert, Norm Eisen. He's an expert, he's a super lawyer, and he's an expert in lawfare. He actually wrote 10 of the articles of impeachment against Trump. But he also has this sort of shadowy background, with the military. Some guy named Gene Sharp, if you Google him, Gene Sharp, that was his mentor. A lot of what he writes in this book called The Playbook, which is literally the playbook on how to run a color revolution, he got from this other guy who's died about 10 or 12 years ago named Gene Sharp. Apparently he was a legend in the U.S. Secret Services, or not Secret Service, but
CIA.
I think it was CIA. Yeah. And he really developed this whole process of how to create a color revolution in a country. Super fascinating if we weren't living through it.
So Leo, I have a question for you because I think what you're describing is the fact that the deep state actors in the government, they're so deeply entrenched that clearly Trump has had a hard time getting rid of them. Either because of, like you said, Obama and the civil servants that the civil servants that are in the Justice Department and the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security, but also the military. And what you were talking about earlier with how Obama had depleted the military. By the way, just this past week, I saw a conversation between Democrats on it was a blog I was watching, and they had some video of some Democrats, and I don't know if it was from a news report, but anyway, they were talking about the fact that it's time to revive the Strong Cities Initiative. Now, most people don't remember the Strong Cities Initiative.
Yes.
But this was the plan of the Obama administration with Loretta Lynch to basically get rid of local police departments and bring in UN forces to the supervision of the UN. And now we're seeing the Marxist Democrats talk about the same idea. If we defund our police, we then can bring in the UN, I kid you not, to police our cities. And so they're open about this now. You have then, Leo, the fact that not only have they purged the military, and I don't know how much of that, like you said, Trump has been able to undo, but they're purging our law enforcement. Police officers are quitting right and left. Good police officers are quitting right and left. And they're going to basically stack these departments with just brain dead yes people who are going to be also thugs on the street. They're going to just be thugs in uniforms.
Yes.
So so when do we see, here's my question to all of you guys, when do we see the citizens rise up? Or do we see, I mean, like you said, we're in the slow boil. Dick said earlier, from a slow boil of a civil war, as you said in your article on Mayberry, Leo, to medium to high.
Right.
But what would it take for the citizens of this nation who are armed, the most heavily armed nation on the planet, to wake up? Is it going to be when Trump gets railroaded, when they try to steal the election? Could that be the catalyst? I don't know. I love to have some discussion on that.
That you bring up some excellent points. Your major point there is something I covered in my talk to the Long Island, New York Act for America, which is why I was late to this meeting, because I addressed that group. And I went over the thing that you just laid out now. It's funny how we're both on the same wavelength. Okay, they already purged and fundamentally transformed federal law enforcement, right? Under Obama.
Right.
He purged the military and interjected critical Marxist theory to the military. So he fundamentally transformed the military. Now, what we're seeing in 2020 is the degradation and neutralization of local police departments. So that last bastion of protection is going to be fundamentally transformed. Mm-hmm. So you take out federal law enforcement, you take out the military, you take out local police, and then you're left with Strong Cities Network, which is the globalized cops, right?
Right.
Because we're going to have all this increasing murder and mayhem. People are going to be crying out for some sort of solution to putting down the crime. And we can't have the old cops back because they're so fed up with the new rules of engagement. They've all retired, right?
Right.
Or they've been defunded. So in comes the UN saying, oh, we'll take care of that problem and you won't even have to pay for it.
Right.
We'll bring in the globalized cops from the Strong Cities Network. They're already available, trained, and ready to go.
That's right.
And so this is a really dire situation, folks. And to Shahram's question, at what point do average Americans, able-bodied men, for goodness sake?
Right.
I'm getting old. I'm 58. I'll be out there, but I hope there's something more out there than me.
Come on now. You are not underprivileged yet. You didn't meet the underprivileged category on that list.
We need some strong, able-bodied, red-blooded American men.
Amen.
In their 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Yes.
To stand up and say, you know what? We draw the line here. You've taken away our legitimate federal law enforcement. You've corrupted our military. Many of us were in the military. I'm 30, 40, and I'm out now, but I know what's going on. Now you're trying to corrupt and delegitimize and defund our local police. And we know where you're going with this. And we are not going to welcome any globalized police, UN or otherwise, Chinese, Russian, European, Eastern European. No, we're not going to accept any of them on our soil, and we will fight to our last breath defending our communities. At what point does that happen? That's a great question.
Well, Mary, you had your hand up.
I'm going to throw a little angle on this that you guys are going to just, have to take it and run with it. But there are some citizens in Minneapolis standing up and taking control. Think about this. And I know you know very well who that is.
Oh, yeah.
The Sharia patrols.
Yes.
They're offering their services to keep the city safe.
Sure.
Instead of the police. And just recently, the city council in Minneapolis, you've seen this probably too, is actually standing in front of the police chief and saying, why is crime now greater than when we defunded you? Explain that to us. The logic just makes your head explode. But look at the Sharia patrols that are going on in
That's right.
Minneapolis.
That's right. Mary, we said that. Do you remember when Leo and I talked about that several programs ago, that this is where it's going to go, that it will break down for a time. Then the Muslims will walk in and say, just like in Europe, we need to have these no-go zones, and then we'll set up the Sharia patrols because they're going to give the Muslims privileges, just like during COVID. So I think that's very likely. This is why I'm arguing for we need constitutional patriot patrols. We need constitutional patriot militias and patrols who are going to do the same thing, who are going to offer their services to the sheriff and to the local cities, even the mayor or whatever, and say, hey, we are here, we're formed, to Leo's point of the red-blooded, young men, and I'm 49. Hey, if they call me up, I'm ready. I'll do my best. But the fact is that that's where we're going. Dick, any thoughts from you as far as the catalyst? What's going to be the catalyst? I mean, how much further is the American populace gonna? By the way, can I real quick, Mary? Somebody had asked a question, and I got a comment on this. There's a funny article that just came out. Can I share this real quick, just for a quick laugh, because we need a laugh with all this stuff? Because somebody had said that they thought their nephew had sent them an article.
I was hoping to read that one. Good, go for it.
Yeah, she said, my nephew had sent me. I don't want to embarrass anybody. A Ninth Circuit saying that the Ninth Circuit overturns the death of RBG. So this is actually the Babylon Bee. But here's the headline. This is a brilliant headline from the Babylon Bee.
Oh, that's great.
Isn't that cool? Overturns the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They will not accept her death. We overturn it to block Trump from being able to nominate. That's a great headline, and I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if it's that far fetched. Actually,
yeah. I mean, the Twitter army, the leftist people on Twitter were going crazy. They were angry at her for dying.
How could you leave us?
I know.
So Dick,
I mean, the woman was battling cancer, for heaven's sakes. She made it to 87. I guess they were saying she. Go ahead.
I honestly had thought that she was in a coma or something, because we heard nothing about her for weeks, and so again, this sounds sinister, but I'm even wondering if maybe she hadn't passed maybe a little bit sooner. And they just kept it under wraps, but they couldn't keep it under wraps anymore. I don't know. I mean, you just,
yeah.
I'm not trying to be weird, but yeah, they're mad at her for dying. so now, so I just thought I had to share that headline. That was just too funny. But
that is good.
What's the catalyst, folks? What is it going to take for the American population to say, we are going to go into the streets? Just like I said, the time has come. I'm telling pastors, the time has come to take the churches out of our buildings and into the streets. Just like you saw with you saw this week in Chicago, the mayor of Chicago, they had 68 shootings, and yet Sean Fuke, who is the guy that's been doing these worship rallies across the country to bring Christians together to worship and pray, and they're seeing miracles and healing. He was in Chicago. The mayor of Chicago sent dozens of police officers to shut down their worship. So you have 68 deaths. These Christians want to gather and pray against the violence, pray for God to end the violence. And the lesbian mayor of Chicago, the radical mayor of Chicago, who, by the way, you guys saw the Newt Gingrich. What the heck was up with this? I'm connected now down here in Knoxville with Newt Gingrich's sister. She lives down here in this area. And so, but did you see him when he was shut down on Fox News for saying that Soros money is backing all these district attorneys like Kim Fox in Chicago, and the one and the mayor of Chicago? This is
the one in St. Louis that
the
charged
one in St. Louis that charged the
McCloskey.
Yeah. So, Dick, thoughts? You're the most seasoned here on this panel. What the most wise of all of us? What is it going to take for the American population?
By the way, I didn't see any accommodation on the index for where you are for people who are 75 and over. I didn't see any underprivilegedness. to
It
that
doesn't
relative
matter
to
if you're
that
white. If you're
side.
white,
I'm not
you're
sure.
privileged.
There you go. So I think it's real serious. I think all the comments so far make that clear. By the way, the UN is meeting this week, and I think Trump will speak. So it'll be interesting to see the games that get played at that incredible political theater event called the UN meeting. But I don't know what to say about the average 28-year-old. I think the 28-year-old is not just a person who's been trained to be a rioter. I think the average 28-year-old has been trained to not be masculine, to be oversensitive. I'm not really sure how many 28-year-olds will lead the fight. I think we're still talking about ex-military, maybe 35, 45-year-old people. I could be wrong.
Well, that's still young in my book. Yeah.
All right. Well, we need those people. I think it all depends on how the first the violent conflicts go. I think if we have some kind of a massive event that brings out all the patriotic Americans who are legally armed and they behave appropriately, that could set a tone. I think the opposite is true. Just like Charlottesville, I'm not really sure exactly what happened in Charlottesville, but it's been used. It's been used by people to fortify their position. So I'm actually at a loss. I'm not sure there'll be a unified response, Shahram, despite the efforts you're talking about to build a militia.
There would have to be some leadership, like you said.
I guess what I'm saying is I think it's a direct irresponsibility on the part of local law enforcement to not organize ahead of time.
Right.
I think the chances for bad judgment and confusion are there, and so I'm really concerned that, and I think I applaud what you're doing, Shahram, what people are doing to build, protect your family, protect your church. I'm very confident about the people that are going to protect their church. I think that's the group that's going to be the catalyst of good things. When we get broader than that and we go out into the community, I think it's kind of a crapshoot just because how hard it is. By the way, we don't have 2 and 3 years to organize the community-based safety committees, which I think are critical. Your work on that is wonderful. By the way, one thing I wanted to comment, if people are interested in the rest of Shahram's story, it is worth listening to. When you laid out last Saturday, the step-by-step process for forming 18 groups across the inland Northwest, that's brilliant to see how it was done and that it is done and those people are functioning. It's very doable. The problem is how much time do we have? That's my only concern.
Right.
Tom Mitchell reminds us that George Floyd's attorney has already reached out to the United Nations for policing help if needed. I forgot about that. Thanks, Tom.
Say that again. That's really interesting. They've reached out to the United
George Floyd's family's attorney. This was a couple of months ago, not long after Floyd was killed. The attorney for the family issued a rather strange press release saying that it would invite the United Nations in to provide policing help in Minneapolis, that they would welcome that. And it didn't get very much coverage in the media, but it definitely did happen.
Well, let's watch the UN this week. What kind of speeches are going to be made by Erdogan and somebody representing perhaps the Vatican or somebody? I think they're going to tee off on critical race theory at the event. I think they're going to bear down on the United States, implying all kind of criminal behavior by the America and its Constitution. I think Donald Trump will be probably brilliant. I just wonder what the takeaways will be. I wonder if there's any implication that they're ready and available. Think about all the cities that have made individual pacts with the United Nations. Think about all the cities that have signed up for Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. We have individual cities led who are more interconnected in their allegiance to the United Nations than they are to the state government that they're in or to the U.S. Constitution. So, oh my God, you could have theoretically an individual city start bringing in incrementally the UN into more visible positions.
Another thing I think that is critical to watch as this civil war heats up, as we get into November, December, and January, watch the Republican governors closely. because I think they're probably privy to more information than we are. I can only assume that. And they get information fed to them, I'm sure, from military sources because they have control over the state National Guard units, correct? So I've been noticing as the summer has progressed that some of the Republican governors have gone from conservative to more moderate on the whole COVID, the COVID rules.
Absolutely.
You got Governor DeWine in Ohio, you got Abbott in Texas, you got Ducey in Utah, you got Kemp in Georgia, and they've all, even as the virus has become less voracious, their rules have gotten more strict. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, it is. And you can put Larry Hogan, who's the Republican Maryland governor and the head of the governor's conference, and he's
right.
Right.
Right. So as I watch them into the fall and winter, if they get even more leftward in their policy making decisions, that to me is a bad sign.
I agree.
Because what I think is going to be happening is these are politicians. These are not people of the highest principles.
Absolutely.
And so it is their natural tendency to want to go with the winning side. And so if you see them starting to look more like Democrats instead of Republicans, to me, that's the sign that they're weighing in the balance what's happening with this low boil civil war, which is getting turned up to medium and could be on high by January. If they feel like the deep state is going to win this civil war and they want to come out with their heads attached to their shoulders,
Right,
they're going to start playing ball with them. And so keep your eye on the Republican governors.
Well, and I think you've got a couple of examples that you might be familiar with, Leo. Michigan has 3 quote Republicans that are going to support Biden. The former Governor Snyder. Governor Snyder is an example of exactly what you talked about. In office, he was very, very much happy with the Obama administration on many issues. He has announced that former governor of Michigan, GOP, leader of the party in Michigan, is supporting Joe Biden, as is the mayor of Sterling Heights. I know you know that.
Right.
So I think you could easily see in the last week before the election, a number of Republican governors actually come out for Biden.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Dick and Leo, the scenario we've already talked about, real quick, going back to the idea of foreign troops, number one, this is when I talk about the West Coast states in particular declaring civil war economically, politically, that's part of it, is that, you may not see these troops, UN troops all over the country, but as you guys, as Dick said, could it be in a city or a state? Absolutely. Already you have Chinese troops rumored to be somehow operating, certainly Chinese entities operating in California. China is the #1 trading partner of the state of California. So I think that's a scenario. But Dick, to your point, with looking at and to Leo's point about things heating up, I think it's very much likely that, and here's why I'm saying what I'm saying. Remember, these governors are still in a state of emergency.
Right.
The legislative sessions in most states don't start till January. So leading up to January, if they keep, and Leo, you're absolutely right. Even Lee here in Tennessee, these governors continue to extend the state of emergency, even though there is no emergency.
It gives them power. It gives them power. It gives them power.
It's about power, but it's also about them mobilizing troops.
Yeah.
Yes.
So locking down their states, stopping commerce, stopping people leaving or coming.
Yeah.
Because as long as they're in this place of emergency, they are operating by fiat. There is no accountability to their power. They just keep saying, well, we have every right. So that's the other thing that concerns me is that not only, like you said, Leo, are they leaning towards stricter lockdowns again, but that they are still in a state of emergency, the majority of them. And that's bad news for
Yes.
being able to reel in the power for the citizens. So this is why, again, I would say it's critical to try to do whatever we can at the local level to really, in the next 2-3 months, at least till the end of the year, which is basically almost, just over 3 months, October, November, December, so 3.5 months, to be able to really reel in our sheriffs and get them to this place to say, hey, we need to be able to have you understand your oath, your duty, and mobilize us, the citizens. Let us help you to defend our county, to defend our, Dick, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment, and it's a little bit off topic, but not really, maybe. This is Sharia Crime Stoppers. We're talking about foreign troops, foreign governments putting troops on the ground.
Yeah.
We have 3,400 mosques.
Yeah.
Those are foreign governments.
Right.
Those foreign governments train people on a regular basis about taking up arms, about taking action. Obviously, sedition is a sanctioned crime under Sharia. So all I'm getting at is, the sleeper in my mind continues to be the group we haven't talked about lately, and that would be the Green Group. Muslims are standing by waiting for any activation that may come, and some of them may actually enter the fray, not just United Nations or other troops.
Well, I think they'll be joining right in with them. Yes.
Yeah. So this is, it's a great point, Dick, too. That's a great point that we have to be concerned about, because
And the Muslim population is younger than the American population.
it is.
They have a lot of young men. Yeah.
And by the way, when you guys are talking about events that could happen, here we have in the North, not here, sorry, I'm still saying as if I was in the Northwest, I'm in Tennessee, but here we had in the Northwest all these fires, and many of them were proven to be arson. Many were proven to be arson by left wing or Antifa or folks connected to these groups. And yet that should have brought out again the patriots, the conservatives. So I keep waiting for that. And when I say trigger event, I'm not saying triggering us to become violent. I'm saying trigger event as this us going in, standing in our streets and defending our streets. Again, we've already seen some of those examples, but so I pray that folks out there will realize that it is going to be small groups that will come together and form, that I think will be a factor. Because if we're waiting for the US military to do it, if we're waiting for the federal government to do it, if we're waiting for some of these governors to do it, I think we've already shown that's more than likely not going to be happening. It's going to be up to us, we the people, if there's any chance.
And they would love to get us locked down, see, with COVID again.
Right.
Because then they have the authority, if they could do a hard lockdown, to keep us in our houses while all this is going on.
Yeah.
By the way, another comment would be, if in fact the boiling goes up to medium and high, and there's violence of a magnitude higher than it is now, then it probably doesn't matter. But if it does slow down, they've got other backup plans. These governors are talking about mandating vaccines. All right.
Right.
So then if they're still in power and they mandate vaccines, then the people that resist the vaccine, some of whom might be white and some of them who might be Christian, they will be declared insane. They will be declared incapable of having a firearm, even if they previously had a license for it. So that there are all kind of downstream things they can do if the violence itself doesn't actually get to the goals they want to get to. They're really got several levels of tools they're planning, and I think we should just be aware of that.
Can I share a quick headline here, guys? Just on that note, you brought up vaccines. I was going to share this earlier. Look at this. Massachusetts becomes the first state that they're now mandating flu vaccines for all students of all ages. Now they're claiming you can have a religious and medical exemption, but I think they'll try to take that away at some point. And they're doing this to supposedly slow the spread of COVID. But we would argue they're doing this to be able to to condition. And one quick question, Lucy had a question.
To condition and possibly spur on the spread of COVID.
Spur on the COVID, because again,
because there's one theory that people who have the flu vaccine could be more susceptible to COVID.
Well, and or the vaccine that they're trying to rush through this warp speed operation thing, because I was the sheriff's conference that I was on, they had Dr. Judy Mikovits, they had Dr. Simone Gold, they had Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. I mean, they had some of the best experts on vaccines, and they were all saying about the fact that there is a substrate product in this vaccine that Pfizer is supposedly the lead candidate on for COVID, and it has nanoparticles in it, and that actually restructures your cell so that if you're actually hit with SARS-CoV-2, then your cell is depleted. It actually degrades it, and now you're going to have a massive die-off because of those who've taken the vaccine, and that will be again the second wave that they'll claim. So, real quick, one question from Lucy was about we were talking about, Lucy, the Strong Cities initiative. Strong Cities is a initiative. So, Leo, she was asking about what you were talking about your acronym.
Strong Cities Initiative. It also goes by Strong Cities Network.
Yeah.
It's run out of the UK. It's sanctioned, affiliated with the United Nations, where various cities around the world cooperate with each other, have joint training sessions and stuff like that for basically militarized police.
Right. Right. And Obama was doing this for years because there were certain cities that are already disbanded their police departments to go to federal policing. So they were trying to do it as a federal policing. But now with even that, they're talking about in these cities, what if we invite the UN? So again,
I believe I talked about it in my book.
Stealth Invasion. Yeah. So I would actually.
So Lucy, I think Lucy may have that book. So if you look in the index, look up Strong Cities Network. Yeah. And you should be able to read about it.
Yeah. And I would not be surprised, Leo and guys, that if again, states like China or states like California cooperate with the potential of UN troops being allowed on their states, because they'll say, well, we have the right to do that.
You can go on their website, Strong Cities Network, and actually find the cities in the United States that have agreed to be part of it.
Yeah.
Keep in mind,
Atlanta is one of them.
Right.
Keep in mind, there's a flow of money. All these grants that come in from somewhere come with money, and so there's always dollars that come in with these commitments. Those dollars are obviously somehow go through individual political leaders' purview. So I think there's a bunch of money going around. I think you've got these large American cities may end up turning out to be the enemy within the whole city. And I don't mean the individual people, I mean the leadership.
Right.
And all the agreements they've signed and all the issues. We see that happening. I think you could make the case many of the largest cities in America are involved in a coup. And the leadership, and we'll see how that pervades. But when you've got major, by the way, that also relates to the whole notion of popular vote and large cities, overwhelming the votes of rural counties, etc. So,
Dick, this is why it was a big deal this week that Barr came after and used the word sedition.
Let's go. It's great.
You said it exactly. We need to start charging these mayors and the elected officials of some of these cities with charges of sedition against the United States of America. Now, if they actually do anything with it, if they actually act on that, now we're talking. Now we're talking that there's going to be some pushback, because without that, then as long as we keep this in a political arena, this is only political, this is whatever. No. This is insurrection and sedition. It is clearly, as Leo said, you can have views. Even Muslims we can argue, well, a Muslim has a First Amendment right to their view, to their viewpoint. They want to come and say, I believe this and this. But the moment you start taking action and applying Sharia and demanding Sharia and saying, I'm a Muslim, like in that questionnaire with their privilege, right? 600 minus 600 points if you're from the Middle East. Really? So, if they're in that place, you know, and they say, you know, when now we demand X, Y, Z, that's when it becomes a problem. You know, I've always said to people, if a Muslim wants to sit in their house and pray 50 times a day, I could care less, as long as they're not breaking our laws, they're not beating their wives, they're not abusing their children. But the moment they demand public accommodation for what they believe, that is antithetical to the United States Constitution. Well, this sedition that these Democrat mayors and Democrat elected officials are inciting, and then on top of that, defunding their police departments. And couldn't we argue that the fact that they're inviting United Nations troops, that is insurrection and sedition? They are basically applying for the overthrow of our nation by inviting UN troops onto their soil, onto their cities, and disbanding their police departments. So I think a great case can be made for sedition. So let's pray that they will fuel this, and it will not just be a headline and go away and nobody hears about it again.
Absolutely. Good
I think
point,
we could also nominate, Shahram, certain imams who should be indicted for sedition, obviously.
Absolutely.
Imam Elahi in Michigan would be at the top of my list.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's listening, but that's okay. These people are basically sanctioning sedition, sanctioning the overthrow of the government in their mosques. We know that. Some of them are directly aligned with Iran. We know that. So let's see how far this sedition thing goes. I think that's a key to see a sequence of sedition indictments. Let's see if it happens. That'll be a major indicator. Mary, do we have any other final questions?
No, we've pretty much covered everything. So I think we need to close it out. This has been a great discussion tonight. Thank you to both Shahram and Leo. Leo, thanks for joining us, even after you did a presentation elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I think you did double duty. You hit a double header tonight, Leo, and you came on deck and added tremendously to what we started with Shahram. We're really, really grateful for this particular team being with us. And next week we have Christine Douglas Williams with us, and then Claire, and we're basically running down now. We've got like, I think Leo and well, Leo, you've got three more before the election. It's getting close, folks. So this is the time. You've heard very specific actions recommended. Please take them seriously. This is the time to be active and to go out of your way. Focus on the election, but please focus on post-election, pre-election. We're not going to be out of it just for the election. Of course, Mary will remind us, and thank you, Mary. I really mean that. He has to win, right, Mary? Donald Trump's got to win.
He will win.
And
Power
Dick,
of positive thinking. He will win.
well, speaking of positive thinking, could I take 1 minute and give a spiritual plug? Folks, this nation was founded upon the principles of Scripture, the blessings of God. Some important events coming up. Next Saturday, the 26th, there's going to be an event in DC called The Return. The idea is for a day of repentance. This is, by the way, also the high holy days in the Jewish calendar, the Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, and then we're coming up on the Feast of Trumpets. Very critical times prophetically in the Bible, where God's timing usually happens around these events, stuff that He does. But the return, also Franklin Graham is leading a march that day in DC from the, I believe it's from the Lincoln Memorial, is it, to the Capitol, starting at 12 o'clock. So it's going to be live streamed. So it's a time for us to pray. That's all I'm saying is it's a time for us to be on our knees, fasting and praying and seeking God. Let's pray that God would break the power and the plans that they have. Everything we've said tonight is dire, but God is bigger and greater. And I just want to encourage everybody that He can break the power of the enemy if we pray and seek His face and turn from our wickedness and once again call on His name. So that's important. And then here in Tennessee, we're looking to have events too. October 3rd, as I said, a plug for church at the City Hall. We're going to take church and church service to our City Hall. We're encouraging others to do this. During the month of October, we're calling on others. If you can gather some Christians, go outside your city hall, your county courthouse, and worship and pray and say, God, we as the church are standing in the gap for our nation. By the way, Mary asked me about what a patriot church is. There's an example of what they should be doing.
Perfect.
And we're standing in the gap and we're praying, we're worshiping, we're inviting the presence of God, and we're coming to the seats of authority. We're not going to let them overrun us anymore and shut our churches down. We're coming to them. And so I encourage everybody, take a small group. You don't have a worship team, take a radio with some worship music. Just pray, just worship, call upon God and stand your ground. Pray for our law enforcement, pray for our president, pray for the elections. Seek God. If we humble ourselves in the next 40 whatever days, I believe God can intervene again. I believe God can thwart the plans of the enemy. I believe that Donald Trump can have such a massive victory on election night that the crooked Democrats can do nothing to steal it, that they'll be able to do nothing to steal it, because all their plans will fall to the ground, because God will show up again and be glorified like in 2016. And finally, we need to commit to turning our hearts back to to our God. So pray for these patriot churches. Pray for these pastors to find a backbone, a spine to stand in this hour and say, enough is enough. We're gonna take our nation back and take our churches back. So that's just my plug. Sorry, that was more than 1 minute. Sorry. My plug for everything we've talked about is so good, but without God, it's nothing. So please, folks, pray. And others are coming together in the next month and a half to pray, from DC to local. Let's bombard this nation with prayer and lift up our voices to the God of heaven, who has all authority and power. So that's my closing 2 cents.
Amen.
Amen.
Just tell everybody real quick where they can find you and how they can help you.
Well, our website, tilproject.com, tilproject.com. Also on Facebook, while it's still up and running, just go to Shahram Hadian. And both on our website and Facebook, we'll have information about our Church at the City Hall event. Again, email us if you're interested in, particularly if you're in the southeast and region from Maryland, Virginia, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky. If you're in Indiana, you're in this area and you want me to come and do the talk that Dick said about building a secure patriot network and what we did in the Inland Northwest, I'll come, I'll drive. I don't really want to fly right now because of the stupid masks, but I will drive and we'll come and we'll present, and we'll try to build something in your area and identify patriot churches, mobilize hopefully your able-bodied men, as Leo said, to come together and get trained. So we'll do that. So thank you guys. Thanks, Dick. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Sharia Crime Stoppers. Thanks, Leo, for inviting me. And it's always an honor and privilege. And I count it a blessing to co-labor with each of you.
Thank you. And Leo?
Thank you, Shahram and Dick and Mary. Shahram, thanks for standing in for me so I could do the double header tonight. I just thank everybody who tuned in, all your questions. Keep following me at leohohmann.com. Click the little follow button on the lower right-hand corner of the site, and you'll get an email every time I post a new article. You can also find me on Facebook at the Hohmann Report. Let's do this. Let's do this thing just the way Shahram said it. Yes, it looks dire. Yes, our enemy is not to be, I emphasized this in the first talk I gave tonight, the number one mistake I think a lot of the folks on our side make, I don't think it's us here as Sharia Crime Stoppers, but as you go out among your friends and family, I think you will find, even though they're conservatives, they don't take the enemy seriously enough. They underestimate what's up their sleeve coming November, December, January, because they're just looking at these useful idiots out in the streets. They're not looking at above those above that level, to the organizer level and the funding level. When you start researching that, man, it's enough to make your head spin. I'll tell you, folks.
Yep.
It is awe-inspiring what the enemy has concocted against this country. But we can break through every bit of that, like Shahram said, because we worship the Almighty God, and they're just doing Satan's work.
Right.
Some of them knowingly. There's a lot of witches, warlocks, and spiritual elements involved in this. They're putting spells on people. They're engaged spiritually, so we need to be engaged spiritually. And if it comes down to that level, and I feel like we're going to come out on top.
Amen.
Let me add one last comment to the Shahram and Leo. They're too humble to say this, but they both have a donate button associated to their websites. So please support them in all they do, because it is critical to keep these two voices alive and speaking around the country. So thank you both for that. Dick, I'll let you close us out.
I don't have anything else to say. I think it's been all said, and we're very grateful for those of you that stayed with us. Mary has a great way of talking about the donate button. It is really crucial. Please take that seriously. Say your prayers. I guess that's my comment. I've heard this said, get right with God. This is the time when you really, really want to be close with God, to get your family there. Find a church. It's doable, but this is a spiritual battle. There's no question about it. And you can't underestimate the implications of it being a spiritual battle. So with that, I'll be happy to say good night for all of us. Mary, please go ahead and close us out. Good night, and thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.